good morning, good morning. Hi, everybody. Oh, that was so weak. Can I get more energy? Good morning, everybody. That was better. Can you hear me okay, or is this too loud? It's good, it's good. Well, my name is Tristesse. I am a graduate student at the University of Chicago, and the research that I'm doing is that I'm looking at native plants for women's health that have traditional uses by American Indians. So I collect plants, I interview people, and I also isolate compounds for activity. So that's just a little bit about me, but are you excited to be here today? Oh, come on, I need you to have like 100 times more energy. Are you excited to be here today? Yeah. That's a little better, a little bit. One more time. Are you excited to be here today? Yeah. All right, I'm excited to have you. And so today is going to work out with our opening ceremony, and we'll have two speakers here that's going to talk to you about what they're doing and why they like STEM, and also why women are great to do STEM. Before we begin, I just have a couple of ground rules. Remember to put your phones on silent. So everybody take their phone out, put it on silent right now. All right, we got that done. Also, we ask that you not use your cell phones, especially during the workshops, but you are open to use them during the lunchtime. So we prefer that you post, tweet, Snapchat, Facebook, whatever you do to promote the event. You can do that during lunchtime and take pictures. And you can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and you can look on there to see the pictures that we posted of you guys. All right? So welcome again to EYH, and now I'm going to have my first keynote speaker. And before I do that, I want you all to check your name tags. So your name tags, the first line should have the first workshop that you're going to be in. And make sure you're sitting in the area where your first workshop is. So everybody's sitting in that area? Anybody not sitting in the area where they're supposed to be sitting? Okay. Let me have someone with an orange t-shirt help her find where she needs to sit. You need to, oh, so you're close. That's good. What about you guys? Okay. So just leave out with them, okay? All right, so we're all good? Y'all ready to get started? Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, now we're gonna have Emily Graslie. She is the Chief Curiosity Correspondent of the Field Museum in Chicago. She has the fun and rewarding task of creating YouTube videos about the museum's research and science, but she's not a scientist. Over the last 4 years, she's documented through vlogs and episodes, various collections, tours, and she also has done interviews and experiments in order to discover the many ways we learn about our planet and its history. Today, she will talk to you about her work at the museum, her background as an artist, and how she merged her passions to follow her dreams. So come on down, Emily. Let's give her a big round of applause.
Hi. Can you hear my mic? Is the mic working? I don't know if it is. Can you hear me? What if I yell? What about now? What if I hold this right up next to my face? Wow, that does have to be really, really close. Good morning, everybody. I'm really excited to be here. Good morning. Good morning. There you go. That's always fun. So who here likes YouTube? It's everybody. So I have the most fun job in the world because I get to do something that pretty much everybody likes, which is watching stuff on YouTube. I'm going to give a little bit of background on how I came to work at the Field Museum and how I became a science communicator without actually having a background in science. But first, I want to ask you guys a question. What do you picture when you think of a scientist? And you can just shout out some words. Lab coat. Chemistry. Explosions, gases, chemicals. Particles, that's a good one, actually. Yeah, so when I was in middle school, when I was your age, I had a pretty narrow idea of what science was and who scientists were. And even today, when you go to Google and you go to the image search and you type in scientist, this is what you get. And you get hundreds and hundreds of pictures of this. It's always like people in white lab coats looking at stuff in beakers. Like almost all of the pictures are people in white lab coats looking like up at chemicals. Like for one, this is not safe. You should not hold a noxious chemical over your head. That is not good lab practice. But I didn't know that that was anything I really wanted to do. And you also get these images of like the crazy mad scientist, you know, some guy with like hair coming out of his ears and acting all crazy. And that to me wasn't very exciting. Like I didn't want to grow up to be some kind of mad scientist. I didn't want to spend all of my time in a lab looking at chemicals, you know, which is just kind of what I thought scientists did. And to some degree, that is what a lot of science is about, is lab work and working with various chemicals and that kind of thing. But I had a very narrow idea of what science was. So I decided to do art. I went to art school at the University of Montana, and I liked landscapes. I grew up in South Dakota. And anybody here ever been to South Dakota? Mount Rushmore? Yeah. So that's pretty much what people know about South Dakota, is that we have Mount Rushmore. That's about it. But we also have beautiful landscapes, and there's a lot of agriculture, and you just get these really beautiful prairie storms that you can kind of watch coming at you for hundreds and hundreds of miles. So I was creating big paintings. Like this is one of the paintings that I did my senior year, and it's of just a big storm coming in across the plains. And that's kind of what I wanted to do. I never really did well in science. In fact, I found my 8th grade report card recently. I had a D in science in 8th grade. It was not something that I really liked or that I thought I would be good at, and so I just decided in college I would just do art. I would stick to my art. I played the violin, so I played in orchestra, but I didn't take any science classes because I just kind of had thought from a very young age that science wasn't for me. Until I had a friend who came to our art class one day, and she had with her some very beautiful paintings of feathers. And I thought it was so interesting. What her paintings were about was that she was painting in 3 different pictures, the evolution of the feather. And I thought it was such an interesting concept. I never thought about the idea of feathers evolving. And I asked her where she went to go learn about this, because she was in all the same art classes I was, and she said she was a volunteer in the campus museum. And I was like, I didn't know we had a museum on our campus, like a natural history museum with all of these specimens and skeletal material and like taxidermy. And I was like, how have I been on this campus for 4 years and I never knew that we had a museum? And she said, well, it doesn't have any exhibits. And then I was just really confused, because I was like, what do you mean we have a museum on our campus but it doesn't have any exhibits? Like, what kind of museum is that? And she said it was a research collection. And so I eventually went over to this museum, and I was just blown away by how cool this space was. And here's a picture that I took, like, of myself standing in this museum to give you a sense of how kind of crowded it was. There were specimens in all of those boxes. So you can kind of see some skulls at the bottom there. There are 2 rows of grizzly bears, and I'm standing next to a cart that has bighorn sheep skulls on it. There's like a bison head up in the corner, and all of those little black boxes have skeletal material in them and skulls from all sorts of animals from all around Montana. And what I started to learn is that by collecting specimens, like mammals and birds from Montana, we're able to learn about what lives there. And this is like a practice of science and natural history. This is a lot of what biologists who study vertebrates, what they look at. And I thought it was cool from an artistic standpoint. So for my last semester of college, I started going in and drawing and sketching all of the specimens. I just thought they looked so cool. And one thing you should know, when you go to art school, you spend so many classes like drawing boxes. And it sounds really funny, but they want to teach you about things like perspective, you know, how you can take something that's 3-dimensional and draw it in a 2-dimensional space, like on a piece of paper. So you would spend so many hours drawing things like bottles and white cups, paper cups, just like this. I don't know how many white paper cups I've drawn in my life, but it's a lot. And so when I went to this museum, I was like, finally, something that's white that I can draw that actually has a little bit of detail and texture, and it's intricate, and it's just beautiful in its shape. And so I started drawing a lot of the specimens there. And eventually, I was bringing my art school friends over, and we were taking photographs in the collection. And I just thought the stuff was so cool that I started reaching out to anybody who I knew to talk to them about how cool this museum was and how useful it was to people, not just scientists, but to artists like me. And eventually I got the attention of a journalist who came in, who wrote a little piece about the work that I was doing in the museum and the volunteer work that I was doing after I graduated. So I eventually graduated from college with my art degree, but then I just never left the museum. I just continued to volunteer there in my free time. And eventually I met this guy, and his name is Hank Green. He makes educational YouTube videos, and he also happened to live in Missoula, Montana, where I was living. So have you guys ever heard of Crash Course or SciShow? Yeah, a bunch of you people have seen those. So Hank Green started those programs on YouTube. And he visited me at this museum, and I was so excited to tell him about all the cool things we had there. And like, I pulled out all of these specimens from the drawers, and for a video that he was doing for Crash Course about the vertebrate skeleton. And you know, I met him and we talked a little bit, and he said, I think you'd really be good at this YouTube thing. And I was like, I don't know, I'm not really a scientist, and I don't know that I should be talking about stuff that I don't know about. And he's like, what are you talking about? Anybody can talk about science. Anybody can be enthusiastic about the natural world. And that was a really good boost of encouragement for me. And so he said, you know what? We're just going to have an experiment, and I've got a guy who I work with who's got some free time. I'm just going to send him to the museum, and you two can make some YouTube videos, and we'll see what happens. And so that's what we did. We started my channel. We called it the Brain Scoop, which is a little tool that you use in the specimen preparation process, and you use it to scoop brains out of animals when you're preparing them for the museum. It's an actual tool. But I like kind of the double play on words. So he helped me start this show, The Brain Scoop. And my goal was to share with people how a museum takes sometimes what is like a roadkill animal. This is a wolf that got hit by a car, and turns it into a valuable research specimen. And so you have to go through the whole messy process of like disarticulating this whole thing. And it can be kind of gross, but it's also fascinating. It's a really interesting way to learn about biology by doing it and with hands-on experience. And that was a lot of what I was doing at the museum, and so we started documenting it. And eventually, I got the opportunity to come here to Chicago to visit the Field Museum. How many of you guys have been to the Field Museum? So many of you have been to the Field Museum. So you know how big it is, right? It's just this huge museum, and it has this really powerful presence to it. It's like you're almost walking into a temple of knowledge. And the Field Museum eventually reached out to me, and they said, hey, you're a little volunteer in this museum in Montana making these YouTube videos. We'd like to bring you here and have you make videos about stuff in our collection, just kind of as an experiment. So I got the chance to come here to Chicago. I'd never been to a big city. I've always lived in small towns and like rural parts of the United States. And I got to come to the Field Museum, and they pretty much just asked me right there on the spot if I would want to move here and have this be my full-time job. And I couldn't think of anything I wanted to do more. So I moved here to the Field Museum in July of 2013, and we just started making YouTube videos about all of the science that happens at the Field Museum. And so I'm not a scientist, so I can't be the expert on all the things we talk about, but I can show up with a camera and a microphone and go to the scientists and be like, hey, what are you working on? So we've done videos with people all around the building. We've made over 150 videos about science at the Field Museum. This is a video that we did that's been viewed like 2 million times about bullet ants. So this is Corey Moreau, and she's an evolutionary biologist who studies primarily ants. And we went into her office one day to ask her to show us, actually she called me and she was like, Emily, what are you doing this afternoon? And I was like, I don't know, just checking my email and stuff. She was like, do you want to watch me milk an ant? I was like, I've never heard that phrase in my life. What do you mean milk an ant? Like a cow? And she was like, no. So these are ants called bullet ants. And if you ever go to Central or South America, you will become very familiar with them because they are terrifying. They are ants that are about this big, but the really scary thing about them is that each ant has a venom in their sting that's so powerful, it feels like you got shot by a gun. Like, that's why they're called bullet ants, because it feels like you've been shot by a bullet. And she was really interested in trying to figure out why a single ant, if they live in these big colonies with lots of ants together, why any one individual ant has to have a venom that is so powerful. And so she just invited us to come to her office and watch her try and milk this ant for her research project. And so I put a picture of a snake up there, because that's how you milk a snake, is by getting its fangs to bite into like a cup that has a seal on it to extract the venom. And so she was trying to do the same thing with the bullet ant. We've also done videos about like clearing and staining. So this is a really cool process called diaphanization, where you can take a specimen, like a whole specimen, and you inject it with different enzymes that turn the insides of the animal clear, and other enzymes and dyes that you can inject that will bond with the skeleton and turn it red. And so this is a really fascinating and also a beautiful way to learn about the natural world. So we've done a video about that. We've done videos about things like millipedes, and I sometimes even get the chance to go into the field with our scientists, because they're working in parts all over the world. They're not just working here in Chicago in labs, but they're going out into the jungle of South and Central America and trying to learn about rainforest conservation. And so I got the chance to be helicoptered into a part of Peru and just essentially left for like 3 weeks. Like, the helicopter just left and we were there in the middle of nowhere. And it was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. And we got to document the whole process, and we made 10 YouTube videos about it. I also got to go to places like Wyoming that might not seem as romantic as places like Peru, but it was still pretty exciting to be out there and to be excavating with a bunch of our geologists these kind of fossil specimens. So here's a fossil of a fish eating another fish. It was a bad day in both of those fishes' lives. But this is a huge assemblage just out there in Wyoming, where there are thousands and thousands of fossils like this, which give us a really good understanding of this one area at one point in time when Wyoming actually was completely underwater. So this is about 50 million years ago. So just by virtue of being excited to learn about these things and having using the communication skills that I learned as an artist, because when you think about talking about art and talking about science, they're actually pretty similar. With art, you have a very short amount of time to tell a story. And this picture is a really good example of that, right? Like, in an instant, you know what happened. You can see that there was one fish that tried to bite off a little more than it could chew, and then they both died. And so talking about science is kind of similar in the way that you tell a story in a video, same way as that you can tell a story with an image. And that's what I get to do for a living. I get to express myself in artistic ways. I get to use what I learned in art school, and I get to talk about science. And I've gotten a lot of recognition for this over the years. And my job gives me the ability to travel all over the world and talk to people like you about how cool science is. And even if you don't think science is something that you want to do kind of as a profession or as a study, you can still be excited about science and still support science and still talk to people about science. And so that's what I get to do, and I really love my job, and I'm really excited about you guys being here today so that you can learn more about things that might have an interest in your life and things that you would be, you might want to study in the future. Even if it's not necessarily science, it can still support science. So we have about a minute for a couple of questions, if you guys have any really quick. Anybody got a question? If you don't, that's okay, it's kind of early. But thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
Thank you. Thanks, yeah. Thank you so much. So I have some questions for you guys about her talk. Let me see who can answer this. So what's the name of her blog? Brain Scoop. And what is a brain scoop? Okay, you're paying attention. Can anybody name one of the animals that she mentioned in the video? Oh, wait, I'm gonna call you out. I think I seen your hand up first in the red. A bullet ant? Okay, any other animals in the pink back here? A snake in the black over here? A wolf? And right here? A bald eagle skull, wow. So she does a lot of pretty cool, amazing things, and I'm glad that, you know, she found her way into science, and she's really excited about it. So we kind of see how you can do other stuff that's not particularly related to science, but actually go right into science. So I'm excited. You guys excited to learn more about what you can do in the science fields? Yes, all right. Well, now we're going to have our next keynote speaker, Eugenia Cheng, did I say that right?
Cheng.
Eugenia Cheng. Eugenia Cheng is a scientist in residence at the School of the Art of Institute of Chicago. She will share her experience of being a female mathematician and of teaching mathematics at all levels from elementary school to grad school. Today, her talk will focus on the issue of confidence and how the differences between typical men's and women's attitude might affect the way they learn, as well as the other ways they learn. So let's please give her a round of applause and give us some energy. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Let's just make this full screen. Hi, thanks for coming out here on this Saturday morning, and thank you to the organizers for inviting both Emily and me and everyone else here to talk to you today. I'm kind of like the converse of Emily, because if Emily is an artist in a science museum, I'm kind of a scientist in an art museum. I am scientist in residence, really a mathematician at the School of the Art Institute, which is another very unusual position. And I used to be a kind of normal math professor at the University of Sheffield in England, and I have also taught here at the University of Chicago. And now I do things like write books about math for everyone. This is my latest book, Beyond Infinity, which is coming out next week. And I would like to tell you a little bit about what I do and what I would like to share with you that I've learned along the way that I wish I knew when I was in middle school. So when I was 6, I had a furious argument with my best friend because we were playing superheroes, and I said I was Superman, and she said, you can't be Superman because you're a girl. You have to be Supergirl. And I really didn't know what she meant. As far as I was concerned, I could be Superman. And I was always completely convinced that I could do anything that a man could do. But I know that not everybody is convinced by that, and sometimes I have talked to students who say that this puts them off going into math and science. And so I have decided to be a role model and put myself out there to show that yes, women can do math and science, and we can be really good at it, regardless of what anyone says about it. I wish we didn't need female role models, because I wish that everyone knew, that you all knew, that all women knew that they can do everything that men can do. But you know, we do need female role models, and one reason we need them is that men need female role models too. Because we can believe we can do anything, but if men don't believe that we can do anything, then it's kind of futile. And so that's another reason that I've put myself out there to be a role model. There are a lot of things that I've seen that men and women sometimes do differently. In all the teaching I've done, I've taught every level from preschool to graduate school, and I also make a lot of YouTube videos. I started making YouTube videos about math in 2007. And you know what one guy said to me at the time? He said, "You will never get 1 million views on a YouTube video unless you take your clothes off." And you know what? Last month, I made a YouTube video about a Möbius bagel. I cut a bagel open along a Möbius strip, and within one day, it had 4 million views. Thank you. I think it's up at around 8 million now. So here are some things that I have seen in the course of my teaching that I would like to talk about. It's all about how people judge each other. And it's also about how we judge ourselves. So there is how students judge themselves. There is how students judge each other. How adults judge children. How students judge professors. How professors judge themselves. How professors judge each other. Is that the last one? Yes, it is. So, how students judge themselves. I've often seen female students, and I will talk about avoiding gender terms later, but I've often seen female students who are convinced that they don't understand things as much as the boys understand things. And they come to me and they say, I don't think I'm doing well in this. I think I should drop your class because I don't understand it as well as the boys do. But often they're actually doing better than the boys. It's just that the boys talk a lot. And that they think that they know everything when they actually don't. And often what has happened is that the girls come and ask me for help a lot because they think they don't understand, and the boys don't come and ask for help because they think they do understand, but they don't. And then the girls end up doing better. And sometimes I think it's that the girls who think they don't understand, it's because we're seeking a different level of understanding. And I always feel like I don't understand anything, but that's because I'm trying to understand everything more and I'm not satisfied. Whereas I've seen many of my male students who are just satisfied with maybe a more superficial level of understanding and then they move on. So if you feel like you understand something less, it might just be because your standards are higher and that how you judge yourself is different. So then there's also how students judge each other, and that's related to that question of what they think of each other. So sometimes the students who talk a lot think that it's best to talk a lot, and that they think the students who don't talk a lot can't be any good. But often there are some quiet students who just don't want to talk a lot and who are doing very well anyway. I never talked at all in class when I was a student, especially when I was an undergraduate, and it was because I didn't want to make myself look stupid. I was afraid that if I said something and answered a question, I would look stupid. And so I didn't want to say anything because I was afraid of how people would judge me. And I still get this in my classes. Female students will often tentatively answer a question, say, this is probably wrong, but, or I think this is a stupid question, but. But I rarely have male students who do that. Male students usually just think that they're going to have the right answer. So that's something to bear in mind as well. Then there's how adults judge children. This is a very interesting point, that even when children are very small, unfortunately adults start attributing different qualities to boys and girls. And so if boys are kind of boisterous, then they say, oh, that's great, this boy is a really strong, feisty boy. But if a girl is like that, then it's not valued as much. And so we get pressurized into performing different gender roles that I think are socially put upon us and that they're not necessarily who we are entirely. Then there's a question about how students judge professors. And this is really interesting. There's been research done that shows that has indicated that students actually judge professors differently depending on whether they're male or female. And there was a study that they did that really piqued my curiosity because it was an online course. So the students didn't actually know whether the professors were male or female, but they just took male and female names. And then the students evaluated the professors who they'd never met, but they had all been online. And the women the supposedly female professors got judged much worse, even when they did exactly the same things, because it was all a setup. And in particular, the female professors were told that they returned graded homework late, even when they returned it at the exact same time as the male professors. Now, I don't know why this is. I have a theory that maybe female professors are usually much better at returning graded homework on time, and so even when it's at the same time, it seems late, whereas for a male professor, that's really great. And so that exceeds expectations. But these things are very circular, that what you expect and then what happens. There's also how professors judge themselves. So often, there have been other studies showing that female professors and female adults still judge themselves worse because we're maybe aiming for higher standards or because we're more aware of our shortcomings. And so you may feel very aware of your shortcomings where your male counterparts are very aware of their skills and unaware of their shortcomings. And so female professors don't put themselves forward for things like promotion or jobs because they think they're underqualified, whereas male professors put themselves forward much more. And so this is one of the reasons that I decided to put myself forward to be a public face of mathematics and be an expert who talks to the media about issues in mathematics. Because someone said to me, I thought maybe I'm not an expert enough in all the areas of mathematics. And someone said, you know, men never say that. When journalists ask men to talk about science in the media, even if they're not an expert, they still think they're qualified to do it. Whereas a woman might go, oh, I don't think I'm good enough to do that. And so if you think that you're not good enough, you might be better than the male people who think they are good enough. Then there is finally how professors judge each other. And adults, unfortunately, still judge each other differently according to sometimes gender things. So they may say, well, I have this very justified criticism. It's not that you're a woman, it's that these things are very justified criticisms about you. And I say, well, if you're not applying those same criticisms to male people, then it's not fair, even if it is justified about me. So I want to talk about focusing on character rather than gender, because I don't think it should be all about gender. We all have different characteristics, and I think that science sometimes appeals to people of a particular characteristic because of the way it's presented, but it doesn't have to be like that, and math particularly doesn't have to be like that. So I think that rather than talking about gender, we should talk about characteristics such as, do you really like being right? Some people really like being right, whereas actually, other people just really hate being wrong. Let's just think about that for a second. It's slightly different. It's like, do you like winning? Or do you just really hate losing? So I don't really like winning, because I don't really like the idea of beating other people. But I really hate losing, because I hate the idea that people think they've got the better of me. But in fact, I'd rather that we just stopped doing winning and losing at all and just work together to create wonderful things. So this is something that is it's very unlike sport, for example. In sport, it's all kind of about winning and losing, and that's supposed to be character building. I hate sport. I don't feel like I'm lacking character. I feel like I just don't like beating people, and I prefer things where you work together. I'm a musician as well, and I like playing music with people where we do things together. We're not trying to beat each other, we're trying to make something wonderful together. So I've invented some new words, and mathematicians like inventing new words, and I've invented new words. Instead of masculine, I like saying ingressive. And instead of feminine, I like saying congressive. And the idea is that ingressive behavior is where you kind of go forward and you don't care about what people say about you, and you're just trying to go forward no matter what. And congressive is where you bring things together and you listen to what people say, and you're more interested in building than winning. You can also think of it as building rather than winning. And I think that math is often presented in a very ingressive way, and science as well, where it's about solving problems and answering questions and getting the right answer. Whereas I think that math and science is more about exploration often, especially at a research level. It doesn't have to be all about winning. And my art students often say to me that they were put off math because they're not interested in things that all have a right answer and a wrong answer, and because they wanted to do something creative. But you know, math and science can be creative as well. It's just that that's not necessarily the image that's always portrayed about them. And so that's why I decided to come out here and portray another kind of image. Yes, science can be all about getting the right answer, but also it can be about exploration and creating theories about things and helping people understand things, which are all very congressive activities. And sometimes the activities we use to attract people, young people, school students into math and science are competitions and problem-solving activities, and that's very ingressive, and that's not the kind of thing I like. And if I had been exposed to competitions when I was your age, I would have been put off, and I'd have said, I'm not very good at this, I shouldn't do this. But you know what? I'm very good at math. I'm a very successful international research mathematician, and I'm not afraid to say so, although it sounds maybe a little bit arrogant. But if men say that kind of thing, they just sound confident. So we should be confident as well, I think. So I would like to share with you something I think is really valuable that a friend of mine who's an executive coach has taught me about flexing your truth. And this is what congressive people can do in the face of ingressive people, because it's tempting to fight back. It's tempting to go, yeah, well, you're wrong and I'm better than you. But I don't like doing that. I can do it. I've learned how to do it. If some very ingressive person comes and challenges me, I will step right up and challenge them back, and then I'll go home and hate myself, because that's not really what I'm like. What I would rather do is be like that martial art, Aikido, where when there's an incoming aggression, you don't use aggression back, but you diffuse the aggression into the ground. And so I've been trying to think of ways that congressive people can be confident without having to become ingressive and fight back. And my friend Alicia Basuk has taught me about flexing your truth. So she says that flexing your truth is about confirming your own self-worth by defining it at all times, so know what your self-worth comes from, and defending it at a moment's notice. And so if you see some ingression coming in, you think of it as not an attack on you, but an attack on your truth. And first you have to understand what your own self-worth is. I met a woman at a party recently who said to me, my name is such and such, and my budget's $5 billion. And I thought, wow, that's a funny thing to say in your first sentence about yourself. And then she started boasting about how she can outdo men in this, that, and the other, unfortunately. And I said, I don't think that I should have to behave like that to be successful. And she said, oh yeah? Well, what makes you successful? And so I thought about it. I thought, what does make me successful? I thought, well, I am doing work that I love, that I believe makes an important contribution to society, that I believe helps people, and that people appreciate. And for me, that is what defines my self-worth. The fact that I can help people understand things that they didn't understand, and that I can contribute to education, which I think is the most important aspect of helping people that I can do. I think that saving lives is more important, but I don't think I was ever really cut out to be a doctor. So I have found the thing that I think is the best thing that I can do to contribute to the world, and that is talk about mathematics, help people understand mathematics, and be a role model to people who might be unsure about whether they can do that. And that is my self-worth, and I will defend it at a moment's notice if anyone attacks my truth. So finally, I would like to conclude by saying, you know what, you don't need a female role model. The reason you don't need a female role model is that you can do anything that a man can do. And if you don't see a female person doing the thing that you want to do, and there may be many things you want to do, if you don't see someone who looks like you or acts like you doing the thing you want to do, that means that you're going to be a pioneer. You can be the first person to do that. And then you can be the pioneer even if no one else has done it before you. There's always a first person to do things. And then maybe in some years' time, you'll come back here for expanding your horizons, and you'll stand here. And you'll inspire other middle school girls, just like you're sitting there. You'll stand here and you'll inspire them with your story and the things that you think that they can do as well. So I hope that you will go forth and be confident in yourselves. Thank you.
An amazing talk. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So who wants to be a pioneer? A pioneer. She said you can be one. Who wants to be one? Okay, all of us do, right? Right, exactly. So I have a couple of questions for you guys about her talk. What was the superhero that fueled her fire to say that she can be anything that she set her mind to? All right, you right here. Superman, exactly. And also, what did she make a YouTube video about that have 8 million hits? See if y'all can, yes. About a bagel, yes, that's good. And some of the things that I took away from that was to be confident, embrace who I am, and love what I do in science. Also flex your truth and confirm your self-worth. And character is important rather than gender. And what were the 2 words that she wanted to replace? Yes, those are the 2 words that she made to replace feminine and masculine. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we'll be moving along. Let's give her another round of applause. So now we're going to move along. Before we get out of here and go to these amazing workshops, let's just all stand up. Stretch out. Got to get us, a good stretch before we leave, because there's some amazing things that are about to happen. So everybody, lift their hands, reach the ceiling, all the way up. Come on, I see you in the red. Lift it all the way up. Yeah. Touch your toes. Open up. Give yourself a hug. All right. Shake it out. Y'all ready to start the day off? All right, I need more energy. Are y'all ready to go to these workshops? All right, so before we leave, just continue to look at your packets and everything that's in here. You can have a seat until we dismiss you. We have some cool hats, some M&Ms, some cool stuff in your bag. Also, we got some cool workshops coming up. Can you hear me? If you can hear me, raise your hand. If you can hear me, raise your hand. Everybody's hand's not raised. All right, so before we leave out of here, just remember to keep your cell phones off during the workshops. Also, I wanted to give a shout out to Miss Chicago, but I think she just walked out. But Miss Chicago is here, and so ask her questions about how did she get to where she is, why does she love STEM in her career, as well as just stay positive, have energy, meet new friends, and talk to each other. So I'm going to dismiss you guys. And the first workshop that will be dismissed is particle detectives. So if you have particle detectives as your first workshop, raise your hand. Particles detective. Check your badge. All right, you're going to find your buddy outside. So you guys can leave out and walk towards the exit if you have particles detective as your first workshop.